Maybe I could start by asking you why your organization, in the context that we've been talking about excellence and innovation, why your organization is a training partner for ESA.
I think for us at the Center of Inter-American Studies for Social Security with responsibility for education, training, and research, it was good for us to partner with the ESA so that the center representing not only Mexico, but the entire Latin American region and the region of the English-speaking Caribbean as well as Canada, we felt that it was necessary so that we could be a part of the new area of setting standards, of enhancing our competencies across the hemisphere, of being a part of a framework which assessed and will continue to assess the relevance and the need for benchmarking, as well as being also a critical driver in setting and establishing best practices across Social Security institutions in the hemisphere. So for us, the partnership was very timely and relevant as we were looking towards guiding member countries in a direction to make them more responsive to some of the international themes and challenges that we were seeing from the ILO, from the United Nations, whether it be Declaration for the Child, looking after older persons, and dealing with the issues of migration and things like that. So for us, it was getting the center ready to be in a position to provide service excellence and to enhance all of what we can offer to our membership.
Fantastic, thank you. And what courses does your organization offer, and in which languages?
Well, we've just done one so far, and we did that in the aspect of governance and all of the related concepts. And by that I mean we looked at transparency, accountability, the aspects of predictability, participation, and how dynamic and robust can be our various institutions. And what we did is to anchor governance as being quite a relevant theme and approach that should be enhanced across the conference area, so that the response time coming from the center to its members and members' response to their constituents, their contributors, will then be enhanced across the area specific to information delivery, how decisions are being made, when decisions are being made, and what level of qualitative dynamics we put into the response and the readiness of these institutions. So for us, we started in Mexico City, and we had participation from 3 countries. We had Panama and Uruguay, and our intention is really to ensure that we have much more members participating, and then growing the involvement and heightening the standards across the areas of the conference.
Fantastic, thank you. And you sort of touched on the aims, and maybe you can expand a little bit more on sort of, say, the learning objectives of the course?
I think for us, we wanted to anchor the course in matters related to organizational transformation and shifting of paradigms, to look at areas of institutional strengthening and retooling and reskilling and realigning the different functionaries across member states so as to allow them to be better prepared to deal with the emerging challenges that we've been talking about this week, and putting in place a response that is not only quantitative but qualitative in nature. So that was central for us in looking at organizational transformation and helping staff to be retooled and reskilled, and enhancing capacities, looking at competencies as it relates to service delivery, and the whole question of measurement and monitoring, which are key component of the framework that we use, governance.
Excellent, thank you. So I know you ran one course this year. What are your plans, or what are you thinking about? I know they're being scoped out at the moment for 2017.
I think for us, what we want to do is the three countries that participated, Mexico, Panama, and Uruguay, at this stage, one of the critical takeaways that we had was the development of action plans. And those action plans are institutional and country specific. So I think our response will be to monitor those for implementation and for adherence, and then to use the successes from those three member countries as a tagline or as a storyline to share with the other countries. And so for 2017, we will be monitoring those action plans for implementation, for relevance, as well as we want to look at involvement with the English-speaking component of the conference, and that is related to the member countries in the Caribbean, and using the resources of the ESA and the Inter-American Center on Social Security Studies towards advancing the critical nature of the work as it relates to the other guidelines. But most importantly, we want to say how it is that, as I mentioned before, institutional and organizational transformation and change must be a part of the framework or the offering that is being made as we look at one area, for example, our response to the Millennium Development Goals, and how it is as institution we put a position in place to deal with migration, to deal with risk, and to deal with injury at work. So for 2017, it will be to, one, monitor the plans that have been developed from the first reading. Two, do some element of expansion to have some courses in English to benefit the members of the English-speaking area, as well as to look at the guidelines themselves and see, based on the specific needs of the member state, how we adjust and which one of those guidelines we promote for implementation across the membership of the conference.
Okay, thank you. One other question which came up in the last session we did was tailored programs. If an institution wants those particular tailored programs, is that something you could help them with as well?
I think that is essential, because the professor who conducted the program for us, that was one of the key things that he recommended, that we look at tailoring specifically many of the guidelines to meet the specific context of many of the member states, because we know that we are not all at the same place. And therefore, what we have to do is to design the approach and look at the best practices that will offer that particular member state what is needed at that particular point in time. Because in response to many of the areas mentioned in the Millennium Development Goals, that perhaps may not be the thing that is critical for many of the countries. But we may have countries struggling with health indicators, countries struggling with communication, with investment. So what it is that we have to do is to really see how our response is going to be very targeted and very specific to meet the needs of the members across the
region.
Across the region. Yeah.
Fantastic. We have a little more time. Is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience at this stage?
I mean, I think for us, the examination of what are our needs across the varying region and specific to the countries. Not only that is not the only critical factor, but when on Monday we were asked what is the key takeaway from Monday's session, for me it was institutional strengthening and institutional building and institutional collaboration. Who are all of the entities or partners that Social Security institutions now, and perhaps the Inter-American Conference on Social Security and the CIESS itself, who are the partners that we are going to establish, to seek out, to help us to implement all of these responses that we have to craft towards the 10 challenges that we saw presented for us. And if the guidelines are indeed and in fact linked to help the membership to have a response and to address issues of sustainability and to address issues of relevance, then I think the whole area of public policy formulation and public policy implications for good and effective management of Social Security is something that will have to be brought on the agenda even before you have, full-fledged implementation of many of the good governance guidelines. Because in some institutions and in some regions, obviously you're going to have pushback because some areas across the globe, some persons, some professionals are afraid of change. And so we like to keep the status quo as is, and therefore any change would then create static. And for me, I think what has to be examining is the relevance of public policy towards a broader set of involvement of all of the constituents, so that we'll have a policy framework that is as wide as many of the good governance principles themselves. So, I mean, I know the challenge for us at the international institution levels and at Social Security institution is how we balance this very delicate position. Wanting the systems to be sustained, wanting public policy enhancement and implementation to be supportive of the guidelines themselves, and how we make that transition and how we keep the level of capacity and competencies of the staff across our region relevant to the current times that we are in.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.